Hello, everyone, and welcome to the eighth episode of the iDebate server. I'm the moderator for tonight's debate. My name is Queen Esther, also known as that girl from CT, and tonight's topic will be, well, this afternoon's topic will be, is the Earth flat? Arguing in the affirmative is iFunny user FlatRoast, while arguing in the negative is the iFunny user Hawk7198. Each debater, oh, there will be no geez, there will be no it's just going to be open dialogue for this debate because we only have a short amount of time. But basically the rules are going to be that they have 20 minutes to go back and forth, and then we will have, is there going to be a Q&A?
Briefly,
Is
if we have time.
There's going to be a brief Q&A, but the main rules are going to be that if there is any direct insults of one another, or using profuse profanity like over and over again, you will be muted at my discretion. And we're just going to jump right in. So go ahead, whoever wants to go first. I believe FlatRoast.
Um, I really don't really need to go first. I'm literally here just to rebuttal whatever it is Hawk wants to say. There is no evidence of the Earth being completely flat. I'll admit that from the first position, but there is less evidence of the Earth being a sphere or the Earth moving or spinning in any way.
So there's less than absolute zero evidence that the Earth is a sphere. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. So my main argument would just be to point a few things out. Yeah, exactly, King Xerxes. So first off, there are actually a number of things that do prove that the Earth is spinning and round. One of those would be flight paths. If you've ever seen flights that are supposed to go from somewhere like Australia to South America, I have never seen a flat Earth model that would work with the flight times we've seen. There have been flights that go over the Antarctic before. Those aren't currently running, but they did for about 3 decades straight. And
Okay, see, hold on, stop 1 second. If you're gonna see, this is why I don't like this medium of debate. If you're going to see, or you're going to point things out like that, I need proof, because that has never happened. Nobody has ever crossed the Antarctic continent. Nobody.
not
Okay,
by aircraft.
nobody has ever traversed it. Nobody has ever gone from one coast. Okay, started off Australia, ended up Africa, or anything like that. That has never happened.
All right, so I don't have it on me right now, but if someone in chat
Search it
want
up.
to look it up, there's actually a list, sort of like a world record type thing, of people who have crossed the
I've seen it.
Antarctic on
I've seen
foot.
everybody that's done it. I've seen everybody that's done it. And literally what happens is they go right across the border and they enter one border and they leave the other border, but it's all across the same side. They have never traversed it, diagonally or horizontal, whatever you want to call it, across. They have never done that. That has never happened. Nobody has ever circumnavigated the world north and south.
All right, so let's just assume that all people that have claimed to have trekked across actually just didn't trek across one side to the other, just walked along part of this ice wall. So you remember when you brought up a Captain Cook who went around the Antarctic, and he had a much different number for how big the Antarctic was than the NASA currently?
Sure, it took them 3 years to circumnavigate Antarctica, and it was about 60,000 miles in circumference, supposedly.
Supposedly. So one thing I'd like to bring up is that he never measured the circumference or anything of Antarctica. That's the distance of his total journey around it. He was really just there to prove that it
So
existed and
hold
was
on.
a continent.
So what you're telling me is that if you circumnavigate closely to the coast of something, you can't tell how far you went around, and therefore tell how big the island is?
He wasn't that close, and he wasn't measuring for that. So no, you wouldn't be able
But
to.
but that's exactly what he was trying to do, was circumnavigate Antarctica. And when he circumnavigated Antarctica, the funny thing is, with the amount of miles he came up in circumference, it's the exact representation of what it would be on the AE map, which is the map that the flat earthers use, which is also kind of funny because that map kind of throws your whole little flight argument really out the window, because your flights that would usually go from, mainly the flights that go from like Perth, Australia to like Chile, Santiago, Chile, they go by way of Los Angeles. So I don't know about you, but it seems a little
Hold
counterintuitive.
on. But maybe I'm not picturing this in my head right, but can you say that again?
Perth, Australia to Chile, Santiago, Chile. Okay, there are two flights that you could buy that are direct flights. I urge you, if you could afford them, to try to buy them. Either way, the money will be refunded to you because the flights will never take place. The only flight that really does go all the way over there is by way of Los Angeles. So you got to go from Perth to Los Angeles. So from supposedly the southern hemisphere to the northern hemisphere, to then travel all the way back down to the southern hemisphere. Does that not sound counterintuitive to you? Or
Well, you see, here's the
examples
thing.
like
It does, but I haven't seen a single flight that has a path that ridiculous.
that there is, I could show you right now. And if like I said, this medium of debate was, a little easier to show things on, I can show you right now there is about 200 flights that will
Do you
go
have
by
a
way
link?
of Los Angeles.
You
I
Do you
don't
can
have
have
a
a
put
link?
link.
the
I'm on my
link
cell
into
phone.
the
I'm on my
chat.
cell phone in my office right now. So I don't have a link. I literally just popped on here just so I wouldn't, miss
Do
the debate. But you
cell
can look it
phones
up.
not
You can
use
look it up.
links?
You can look it up. You can look it up. Okay, just like you told me, I can look my link up. You can look your link up, and you can find it yourself. It's simple. Just look up flights from Perth, Australia to Santiago, Chile, and tell me there's not at least the first 12 that are going to go by way of Los Angeles. That's not the only evidence. There's more evidence. There's a woman that recently, I believe it was last year, had a baby on a flight. If you realize where she left from and you see where she was going, she's supposedly going from, I forgot exactly where it was. It was one of these Asian continents, and I think it was, I don't know, it was near Singapore, and she was going towards Los Angeles. And don't quote me on the Singapore part. I got that part wrong. But the emergency flight ended her up in Anchorage, Alaska, which would have been a deviation of over 12,000 miles, or sorry, 1,200 miles. So emergency flight stops or emergency stops like that, when you look at them on the flat earth map, or whatever you want to call it, the AE map, how it's really called, it's a straight shot, it's a straight line. Anchorage, Australia would have been halfway there to Los Angeles. So it wouldn't have been a 1,200-mile deviation. And these are all things that you could look up. This is all just regular news.
Well, first off, and this is a response you gave to something earlier, you don't think that hasn't been debunked. That
Here we go.
has been
King
debunked.
Xerxes said there's some that go to LA, so I guess I have to do it. Perth to Santiago, Chile.
And then the other point of evidence, which I was going to bring up, was gyroscopes. How the hell are those supposed to work on a flat Earth that's not moving
So
around?
a gyroscope actually kills your whole ball Earth notion, and that one is super simple. All flights, okay, every single plane is guided by well, you could do line of sight, which is illegal in most commercial flights, and you could be guided by your instrumentation. Instrumentation is guided by a artificial horizon. The artificial horizon is a mechanical gyroscope that is powered by a vacuum pump. Okay, as soon as the plane gets up to altitude, vacuum pump kicks on and the mechanical gyroscope starts to spin. A gyroscope's whole purpose is to maintain its orientation, okay, no matter what the plane is doing, essentially giving you your horizon line. All right. If the plane were traversing a sphere, they would literally have to dip the nose down. You have to. There is no other way to do it. Okay. First of all, no pilot has ever dipped the nose down, and you cannot ask any pilot. You can ask any pilot that question, and they'll tell you they'll never dip the nose down. Number one. And number two, if they were traversing a sphere, the artificial horizon would literally start to spin the other way. There is no way that the artificial horizon is going to stay with the sphere, because the mechanical gyroscope just won't allow it. It's a mechanical gyroscope. They literally maintain rigidity in space.
Well, something that's interesting to note is you say it would flip around. I'm not sure entirely what you mean, but I'm assuming you mean it's going to move time.
Right. So think about
Well,
the nose
if
dipping
you
down.
so
Your
if you look at
horizon, your line's going
manuals
to go
in
up.
if you look at various manuals and technical things on it, they reference many times it has to be adjusted in flight, especially on longer flights, for that exact reasoning that it will get lost over time. So if they acknowledge that it goes off over
What would
time,
get lost over time? I'm sorry,
just
you're talking lower now. I mean, you got to get closer to your mic or something.
oh, sorry, I moved it away because someone complained I was breathing on it. So you're saying that it would slowly move over time and that it would throw off the navigation of the plane. Well, there are a bunch of places and manuals, not just for planes, but for ships as well, that talks about how you have to adjust them to counteract this. So clearly, this isn't some globe-destroying argument. It's acknowledged in the technical manuals. You have to
No,
adjust these as you
you
go.
gotta pull that up. You gotta pull that up because that's I have the technical manuals and none of them say that. None of them
Are you sure
are
about that?
adjusted for. None of them are adjusted for the sphere of the Earth. None of them are. It's a mechanical gyroscope. You cannot adjust it. If it were an electronic gyroscope, there might be some adjusting. But since the gyroscope is literally only moved by the pressure of the vacuum being created from the height, from the speed of the flight moving, the air is being pushed into this vacuum pump. The vacuum pump then powers the gyroscope, and the gyroscope at that point is purely mechanical. It is mechanical because literally what the gyroscope is meant to do, keep its rigidity in space. That is what is needed to keep level flight. Not only that, but planes only work with level flight. The plane has to be flying level and with a certain amount of thrust to stay in the air.
Okay, I don't think anyone's doubting that. I'm not sure why you decided to add that
Well,
last bit.
because level flight can't happen on a sphere, my friend. If you are traversing a sphere, you physically have to dip the nose down sooner or later. Might not be that much of a dip. You're not like completely dipping it down, but there has to be a dip down. If you dip down and your gyroscope is staying rigid in space, the gyroscope will literally start to read elevation.
Okay, one of the things you keep bringing up is you have to tilt the nose down, and that's one of those things that just isn't true. If you look at planes, oftentimes, depending on the speed and pressure, the lift of the wings isn't entirely enough to keep the aircraft flying at a steady altitude, and so you need to tip the nose up a little bit so that the thrust kind of
So
pushes
think
upwards a
about what
little
you're
more.
saying. Think about what you're saying and think about a ball, right? Think about a little plane traversing over a ball. Think about a plane now flying, think about a long flight, 1,200 miles, right? Those are some flights are even longer than that. You're going to have to go with the curvature of the Earth. Because if you completely continue flying straight, you're gonna fly straight off the Earth. You're gonna go right into space.
Okay, but the curvature of the Earth isn't the only force acting on it. You have differences in pressures, the plane that goes up, which is going to decrease the amount of lift. You're going to have things like wind that's pushing on the
Okay,
plane.
but
You're going to
at
have
the end of the day,
You're going to have gravity as well, which as the plane does go further along the Earth, if it doesn't nose down at all, which its trim is also going to be doing over time, then gravity is going to start pulling it down harder, and that's going to pull the nose down. There's so many forces
gravity's gonna
acting
pull
on a
it down
plane.
harder. Hold on. Gravity's gonna start pulling it down harder.
Let me rephrase. As the nose goes up, the gravity doesn't pull it down harder, but you're going to have less lift, which is going to pull the plane down because the angle of attack relative to the air. I phrased that wrong, but
So what you're saying is the plane can fly completely flat and level. Okay, and here's another thing about planes, right? If you're thinking about a ball, okay, everybody stands on the top of their ball, right? So everybody's at the top of their Earth, right? That's just how it works. You always will have the horizon fall if you lift off a ball. The horizon will always fall. Only time the horizon stays flat and level with your eyes, no matter how high you go, is when the horizon is flat and level. So what you're telling me is a plane starts flying flat and level and stays flat and level, and it will continue with the curvature of the Earth while never adjusting for the curvature of the Earth. That's what you're saying?
it's constantly adjusting because there are tons of forces acting on it. That's what I just explained.
But
You have trim,
it
you
doesn't
have
work that way.
wind, you have gravity, you have differences in
Okay, you know
pressure
what?
which
Let's move on
affect
to
the
another subject
lift.
because you obviously do not understand how planes fly. This is not. It's just
Of
it really
course,
you're just
I
off
don't
on this
know
one, man.
anything about how planes fly. There's nothing that affects a plane except the curvature of the Earth. I'm sorry. I
What you
should
need to
apologize for my
understand, okay,
ignorance.
what you need to understand, what affects the plane the most is the pilot, okay, or the autopilot, right? On commercial flights, the pilot takes the plane off. As soon as he reaches cruising altitude, he no longer is the pilot. What now is the pilot is called the autopilot. The autopilot flies using the artificial horizon. The artificial horizon is a mechanical gyroscope that maintains its rigidity in space. If it's going to maintain its rigidity in space, it will only maintain a flat and level flight if you are moving flat and level. At the moment that you have any type of force, you want to call it, because gravity is not a force, but all these other forces, these magical make-believe forces you're talking about, if any of those do anything to the flight itself, the artificial horizon will know it because it is rigid in space. Once it's spinning, it will not move from its rigidity in space. Okay, it will have, there is a certain amount of adjustment for, I forgot what it's called now.
5 minutes left,
The
I
word is
believe.
skipping my mind now, but there is a certain amount of adjustment for precession. That's what it is. But that is adjusted also mechanically. There is no electronic adjustment for anything in there. So when the autopilot takes over, the plane is flying flat and level.
There was
Okay,
an
so are
article
you done
that
talking there? I just don't want you to continue. Yeah, it is flying pretty level as it's balancing many different forces at once. It's never going to be perfect, but it will get pretty darn
Please name these
close.
forces for me, man. Name these forces for gravity is not a force. So move on from gravity. That is not a force. What is the next force that is acting on this plane?
Differences in speed and air pressure that affect the lift, the angle of attack, which if it's flying level, it's not going to be changing all that much.
Okay, but there is no differences in air pressure because once it goes up to 31,000 feet, the air pressure there is the air pressure there, and it will cruise at 31,000 feet. So there's no differences in that. So it
So
has lift. It
hold
has
on.
a continued lift
So
because of its level flight path with thrust to keep it at the speed that it's moving at that altitude.
I want to get this straight. So 31,000 feet across the entire Earth, it is exactly the same pressure. No matter where you go, if there's temperature differences, none of that affects the pressure at 31,000 feet.
Hey guys, you guys jumped like 4 different topics in the last 2 minutes. Roast and Hawk, you guys have jumped 3 different topics in the last 2 minutes. Try and pick a topic, and then just stay on that one.
That's what I was saying at the
You
beginning.
know,
I
I
wanted to
actually
pick a
want to
topic
pick
and
a
I'll rebuttal
topic.
it.
Okay,
So,
agree on a topic and then just stick with it. Don't jump around.
so is gravity a force? I think is actually a pretty good topic. Would you like to?
Okay, so here we go. Let me ask you something. What evidence is there of gravity itself? Don't tell me just drop something because that is not evidence of gravity.
The
So
Cavendish experiment?
the Cavendish
Yeah.
experiment has never been able to be repeated ever again, and the Cavendish experiment has been proven to be false.
Look at YouTube right now. I
No, no,
swear to
no, no,
you,
no, no,
there are
no, no, no,
hundreds
no,
of
no, no.
examples that all get
No,
the
no, no, no.
exact same
No,
result.
no, no, no. Because Henry Cavendish set up these extreme parameters to make sure that there was no outside influences. He wouldn't even be near the building to make sure there was no outside influences. While all these YouTube ones are setting it up in the middle of a classroom, okay, with wind blowing around, all kinds of atmospheric changes and temperature changes, how you like to say, all different factors. I would like somebody to go back, and nobody's ever been able to do it again. Go back and do exactly what Henry Cavendish is.
Yeah, except all of the hundreds of universities that do it every year, many of which are on YouTube and many of which
Nobody has
are
ever
in
been able to get it.
places
Show
that
me
are in
one person that has
vacuums.
done it. Show me one person that has done it, in its entirety, the correct experiment, and it's actually worked for them. Nobody. You can put the reference right now if you can find it.
Actually, someone in chat did that for me if you want to look at
Yeah,
that.
let's see.
I'll go ahead and read off what has been linked in the chat, so those of you who listen afterwards know. But M.H. Shamos, Great Experiments in Physics, Henry Holt and Company, New York, 1959, page 75, contains Cavendish's paper. R.E. Crandall.
Anything that anybody's saying, I got to figure out a way to turn this up.
No, Roast. When I come on the mic, it lowers people's volumes because I have priority speaker.
Okay.
I'm reading off what Reliable Lefty posted in the chat, so the people that are listening after the fact can know what you're reading. R.E. Crandall, AMJ Physics, page 54, 367, and that was written in the year 1983. J.C.I. Deuce and C. Ream, AMJ Physics, page 55, 706, also written in the year
Okay,
1987.
so let's move on from this because none of those can I actually look up right now and verify and look at the scientific journals on and see if they even did it correctly. So let's move on to why I'm saying gravity is not a force, because you have to first figure out which gravity you're talking about. Are you talking about Einsteinian gravity? Are you talking about Newtonian gravity? Because they're two completely different things. And if we're going to go by Einstein, which is one of your high priests in scientism, he literally says it. Gravity is not a force. It is a manipulation of space and time. So which one is it for you?
I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm not going to be arguing about that. I'm arguing about we've observed gravity.
You just said, I want to argue gravity is not a force. That's a great one to start with. Now you don't want to start with that? Are we just going to bounce around till you get a subject you actually know about?
Roast, you need to let him respond.
A bit more. What I'm talking about is based on things like the Cavendish experiment, where we can observe a force. If someone else doesn't want to call it a force and they want to call it something else, sure, they can do that. That's not what I'm arguing about. Something like that.
What you are observing in
it a
the Cavendish
force.
experiment is a force. It's called the electromagnetic force. Okay, there's an electromagnetic attraction. Okay, between those two objects, there is no gravity. Okay, there is no gravity.
So how does this electromagnetism affect the flat Earth and gravity? Is that what causes
So
gravity on the planet?
electromagnetism is really simple. Electromagnetism, us, not all flat earthers, because like I said, nobody has any real proof of any of this. It's just, you try to put a conglomerate of proofs together, okay? And you try to see which ones.
Gentlemen, the 20-minute period is up.
Bucket.
Gentlemen, the 20-minute period has ended. Roast, how much longer do you have to be with us?
I got another about, 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, do you guys want to do a Q&A or you want to keep going?
It's whatever he'd like, man. I'm like I said, I'm just here to oblige.
I'm also up for whatever. Would you like to get some people in the chat involved, FlatRoast?
Sure, man. That's fine with me.
All right, let's do Q&A.
Okay, I'm going to set up a queue. Everybody is going to join that queue if they have a question they want to ask. Everybody has been server muted who is not a moderator. If you would like to join the queue, go ahead and click the check mark on the queue, and it will automatically unmute you when it is your turn, and you can ask your question. Make sure to identify who you're asking your question to. You have to join the queue. Click the check mark.
I believe Nash is first.
All right, cool. So my question is directed to FlatRoast.
Yeah.
You said that the Earth is not spinning, correct? Or at least there's no evidence.
Correct. Yeah. Airy's failure tells us that.
How does a pendulum work?
I think you're talking about Fulcrum's pendulum.
If you have a pendulum like hanging from the ceiling,
mm-hmm.
and it swings back and forth, and it progressively
it's the
knocks
same.
other
It's the
stuff
same
over?
thing as it's the same thing as a Cavendish experiment. If you go and you start analyzing flat Earth, I guess, cosmology. If you think about it, the sun is spinning around us. The sun is a huge ball of electromagnetism, and it creates
what does this have to do with pendulums?
If you let me finish, you'll get your answer, buddy. So as soon as the sun is going around, the pendulum, if you notice, goes around, at a certain rate, okay? And it's always a certain rate, never speeds up, never slows down. It's the same rate that the sun goes around the earth. It's electromagnetism, and it stimulates the ether, and the ether stimulates the pendulum swing. It's just a resonance field.
Okay.
The ways that you guys explain things like the Coriolis effect, you guys explain it with the spin of the Earth. But if you really look at the spin of the Earth, right, it wouldn't create the Coriolis effect the way it's created. It would not do that, especially if you throw in gravity and you throw in the bulge you guys talk about, and then you throw in centripetal forces, because really you guys talk about centrifugal forces, but centrifugal forces is a fictional force. It's really all centripetal. So if you throw all those things in,
Okay, Roast.
Coriolis effect.
Roast, this is the Q&A. No one has asked you a question yet.
Okay,
So
sure.
I just jumped into the queue because I do want to ask a question. Because
Okay.
I want you to answer why we observe this phenomena, the one that I had sent you previously. You said that you had an explanation for it, but you never offered the explanation. And
Which phenomenon was that?
I will repeat.
I'm sorry, I forgot about it.
On a flat disk, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The only
Yeah.
place you could be standing to see the sun revolve around you at a constant rate would be the North Pole. Because the North Pole is
Right.
the center of the disk. However, no matter where you are on Earth, whether you're in Perth, Australia, or Santiago, Chile, when you look up at the sun, you can measure it reliably to move laterally across the horizon at 15 degrees per hour, no matter where you're observing it from. How
Sure.
is that phenomenon possible if we are not if we are on a flat disk?
The sun is moving at 15 degrees per hour no matter what. What you observe is what you observe, okay? What you observe has limits.
Yes,
You
I observe it
you
moving
are,
at 15 degrees per hour regardless of where I'm standing on the planet. That is not a possible
what
observation on a
you
flat
are
disk.
observing, what you are observing has limits. When you wake up in the morning,
That's irrelevant. I can see that observation anywhere on the planet.
Are you gonna
Why?
let me? Is this a Q&A, or are you just gonna talk over me the whole time?
Let FlatRoast explain, please. Go ahead, Flat.
When you look in the morning, you wake up in the morning, the weatherman shows you what your visibility range is. Your visibility range is how far you can see up to the horizon. So every morning or every day, you're only going to see from horizon to horizon. Okay, the sun will always move at 15 degrees no matter what. I don't think you're understanding the size of the Earth, of the flat Earth disk, how you want to call it, because it's not a disk, it's not just spinning in space, and the size of the sun itself. You're still thinking of a big sun and a small Earth, and it's really a small sun and a very big Earth. And it's spinning in between the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer. And it spirals in, and it spirals right back out. Okay, so no matter what, you're always going to see it at 15 degrees. What I
Do you know
challenge
why
you
we
to
see
do,
it at 15
what I
degrees?
challenge, hold on, what I challenge you to do is go look for a 24-hour sun in Antarctica. The clips are always going to be cut. The clips are always going to be pasted. They're never going to give you a full 24-hour clip of the sun. Of the sun.
Okay, that's just a bald-ass assertion. First of all, I would have to go
It's
to
not,
Antarctica
it's not, 'cause I've
physically
looked
to
it
see
up.
that. But hold on. On the poles, we do see, like, I assume you acknowledge people have been to the North Pole.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so why do you think it might be the case that there can be a 24-hour sun in the North Pole, but not in the South Pole?
Well,
What would be your argument against that?
Think about this. The North Pole is the center of our flat Earth. The North Pole is the center of the AE map, the
Okay.
azimuthal equidistant map. Okay, and the South Pole is anywhere south from that. Okay, so the South Pole is literally the big ice wall all the way around. So if you're standing on one side of the ice wall, the sun's going to
Before we go any
eventually.
further, I wanted to follow that up. Why is it the case that there are times on Earth, in particular seasons, where you don't see the sun 24 hours a day?
Well, that's
Where does
because
it go?
the sun, it spirals all the way down to the south. So the north doesn't see the sun when it's closer to the Tropic of Capricorn, and the south doesn't see the sun when it's closer to the Tropic of Cancer.
So then, does the sun have like a shape-shifting lampshade on it?
No, the sun has its parameters. The sun is very, very small. Okay, the sun
But
is
you
the
would
same
have
size
to
as
be
the
arguing
moon.
that it is changing shape on those parameters, because during the seasons where the sun is not visible in the North Pole all 24 hours of the day, it's still visible on the same parts of the Earth when it is visible 24 hours a day. The shape doesn't change.
You're not
So
making sense there for me.
no, for a flat Earth model to be true, the sun would have to be changing shape, because the reason it does that on a globe. The reason it does it on a globe is because the globe is tilted the same direction no matter what.
Do you understand?
But
do you understand how small?
Roast.
Oh, I'm
On a
cutting you off now.
globe,
Sorry, buddy.
the Earth does not change its axial tilt. It stays the same. So when the Earth is in a different position...
What are you talking about? The axial tilt changes all the time. It's called the wobble. That's literally the precession of the Earth. That's. I mean, and you're right about that. The actual tilt has not changed, and that kind of goes against your ball right there. It has not changed, and it should have changed already. We have had the same North Star for the last over 5,000 years. The pyramids, the Pyramid of Giza, is still aligned with Polaris. It's still aligned with Polaris. So by now, due to the wobble and the precession, we should have had at least 4 to 5 North Stars.
That's not true.
That is true. You can just look it up right now. It's still aligned with Polaris.
Yeah, like when I looked up the flights between Perth. No, like when I looked up the flights between Perth and Santiago, and not a single fucking one of them stopped in Los Angeles, California.
I can show you about 200. I can show you about 246 of them.
Hello.
Do it.
I can show you about 246.
I literally just Googled the flights from Perth to Santiago. Not a single one of them stopped in LA.
You literally Googled Qatar Airlines. There's only one airline that flies the direct path.
Guys, there is someone else in the queue. I don't know if he doesn't mind waiting, if you guys want to continue, or...
Dan?
Do you mind?
Seems like King Xerxes wanted to debate me more than Hawk did.
Okay, yeah, I did, but Hawk is the one that
so
volunteered for this, so I wasn't gonna take it.
I'll take on your debate whenever you want, man. You have a lot of misconceptions
about
your own cosmology.
It took you forever to get in here. No, I mean you
have.
Buddy,
listen. Not all of us are young kids. Not all of us are young kids. Some of us are grown adults with their own business, so we don't have all the time in the world to be debating about things that you guys aren't going to change your mind anyway. So I can hit you with all the evidence I want. If you guys aren't going to go research it yourself, you're not going to change your mind. So what's the big deal?
Roast, you still have not answered any of the questions that I have made.
Oh, dude, it's kind of hard to answer your questions when you're talking over me the whole damn time. So, I mean, how about we let the other guy ask a question? Maybe he'll allow me to answer it.
He said he'll wait, but I want you to answer why it is the case that when I Googled flights from Santiago to Perth, not one of them stops in LA.
Okay, dude, do you want me to show you a link of the ones that stop in LA?
Just Google flights from Perth to Santiago and send that link in here.
Dude, you can't just go by the first Google. You're going by one airline.
No, it's multiple airlines. Did you not look at the link?
Go look at American Airlines. Go look at United Airlines. They all have flights from Perth to Santiago, and they go by way of LA.
Hold on. We're not doing this.
I'll look it up for you right now, buddy.
LATAM.com Airlines. That wasn't the cheap flights. It was so just Google. And it gives you a list of airlines, not just one. So LATAM Airlines has one stop in Sydney. Then you have Qantas Airlines that has 2 stops, one in Sydney and one in a place in Guinea. I don't know what that is. ANA Airlines stops in NRT.
No, hold on. Let's look up what BA is.
What?
Let's look up where that other one is. I mean, because we're just
BRNE.
Throw them around.
That's not
like
LA.
Like,
if it was LA, it would say LAX.
Right there. Let's look up what that abbreviation is.
Okay, BRNE Airport. Bern Airport. That's in Switzerland.
Oh, damn. Damn. All the way to Switzerland, all the way up there to come back down to Santiago, Chile?
What's your point?
My point is, why would they do that? Why would you waste all that flight? The other thing is, the woman that left, and I keep on forgetting, I think it was Nepal.
No, Brisbane.
Nepal
That's Brisbane, not Switzerland. It's the Brisbane airport. Brisbane, Australia. I didn't know that you can click on them and it'll tell you which one it is.
Okay.
I just typed in B&E in Google. So
in
Brisbane,
just
Melbourne.
Look up the recent news. Look up the recent news of the woman leaving Nepal, okay, on the way to LA.
George Bush Intercontinental Airport. Where's that at?
I don't know. But obviously, if it's George Bush, it's got to be somewhere in the United States, right?
Not necessarily. George Bush Intercontinental. That's in Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's not a direct flight. It's not meant to be a direct flight either.
But why would you go to the northern hemisphere to go back down to the southern hemisphere? Why would you do that?
But this is beside the point. You said that they all stop in LA, every single one of them.
I didn't say. I did not say they all stop in LA.
I have it recorded.
Over 246 of them that stop in LA.
You do realize this is being recorded, right?
Yeah, go back and look at them. I didn't say they all stop in LA.
Fantastic. All right,
go back and look at them.
None of them stop in LA. None of them stop in LA.
Listen.
And you said they all did.
Now you're just trying to throw around fallacies here.
That's bullshit, Roast. Okay, I'm going to let somebody else ask a question because Flat just wants to lie to me.
You just saw one
Next person.
that goes from Perth to Houston and from Houston back to Santiago. Please, anybody in this
Next person, ask a question, please.
Current
Next
user
person, ask
is
the question.
hemisphere.
July.
Now you're
Right.
pissed off because I got you on one.
No, Roast, you said they all landed in Santiago, and it makes sense why one of them would go to Texas.
It does not matter. You just found one that goes to the northern hemisphere to then go back down to the southern
Because
hemisphere.
it's not meant to be a direct
What is
flight.
the point of that?
Because it's not meant to be a direct flight.
But you don't make a direct. Are you kidding me? If you're on the way from Miami to New York, are you going to stop in LA first? You're going to go all the way cross country to then go back to New York? Come on, man. Start thinking about what you're saying here.
Roast, not all flights are meant to be direct. Because they are cheaper when they're not.
But dude, listen, there are some flights that are not meant to be direct. But you do not go 2, 3, 4, 5,000 miles out of the way. All right, you usually are somewhere in between. Like if I'm going to go, from Miami to New York, I might stop in North Carolina, maybe Tennessee, maybe Atlanta, Georgia. But I'm not going to go stop in LA. And that's literally what Perth to Houston to Santiago, Chile is.
Maybe it's
It's
not
even worse
commercially
than that.
viable. Maybe there's not
It's-
a huge demand of people that need to go directly to Australia to Chile,
Okay.
but there is a lot of people that need to go from LA to Chile. So just to make it economically viable, they stop by LA first, and they give them a discount just because of the long departure.
There's no discount. The flights all cost about the same.
Though some of these are thousands of dollars in difference.
Yeah, well, the direct flights are, yeah. And like I said,
So
try to
you
buy one of
acknowledge
those.
there are direct flights. Fantastic. Dan, ask your question.
I acknowledge that there are direct flights being sold. Yeah.
Go ahead, Dan. It's your
I don't acknowledge that they're actually taken off the ground.
All right. My question is for FlatRoast.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think about organizations like NASA, who often show lots of different kinds of evidence for round Earth? What would they
Well-
perpetuate it if it's false?
Well, let's first. We need to first, digest and dissect the word evidence. You got to figure out what you mean by evidence, right? So when I mean by evidence, scientific evidence follows the scientific method. Okay. Not only does it follow the scientific method, but it is falsifiable, it is repeatable, and it's usually, or not usually, it has to be empirical if you're going to go through the scientific method. NASA does a lot of great things. Okay. I think NASA is a great organization when it comes to making like refrigerators and advancement for vehicles. But when it comes to space, they have never done anything in space other than lie. Okay, the ISS is the one proof that everybody shows. You can see it flying by the sky. Yeah, there's an object up there you can see flying by the sky. Do you know if there are actual astronauts on it? Nobody really knows. But when you look up the video footage, and there's hundreds of hours of video footage of them faking all kinds of parts of the ISS. You got one guy talking about if one droplet of water ends up on any of this equipment, it'll all fry. It's going to be crazy. And then you got guys just, with huge bubbles of water up there, just sucking them up. Then you also have times where they're all floating and all of a sudden they all fall at the same time. Okay. And that is clear proof that they are all on a hyperbolic plane. Okay. They're going up just like the Hubble telescope. The Hubble telescope is mounted on a plane called Sophia. Okay. She flies real high at about 70,000 feet, and the Hubble telescope gets all its shots. There is no telescope around the Earth. Now, there are satellites. Some flat earthers say that they're not, but there are. And those are all part of the NASA Loon program. They're all launched from Antarctica on huge balloons that amass about the size of 3 football fields. NASA, if you look up, and there's a guy named Robert Bassano, if you guys want to look him up, great YouTube channel. Along with him, there's Quantum Eraser. And these two guys, they break it down real simple. They show you how much helium NASA buys per month. Why would NASA need all that helium if they got rockets? Okay.
Rockets are a lot more expensive to throw up into the...
Right.
Rockets take fuel.
Right. But we hear about space launches for satellites all the time on rockets, but now we need helium balloons to launch rockets, to launch satellites. The point is, there is, are you going to just jump in on everything there, King Xerxes? I'm trying to answer this.
I didn't know you were still answering his question because you're so far off topic.
Yeah, still answering his question, buddy. So, all right. So NASA plainly has never. I mean, let's look at NASA's biggest accomplishment, right? The moon landing. Let's talk about it now. 60-something years later, we've never gone back. If you ask them why we haven't gone back, they lost the technology. Okay, we went back with the technology that's inside of a scientific calculator nowadays, and now we can't go back. If you go look at the main engineer for Orion, one of the lead engineers, he says the issue is the Van Allen belt. We're not able to cross it.
So can I actually step in here? Because this is one argument that
Yeah,
I've
wait, hold
encountered
on.
a lot.
Dan, let me just ask you, has your question been answered?
I got about 5 minutes.
Hold on.
I want to know what kind of motivation would NASA have to fake the...
$52 million a day to do whatever the hell they want with.
Okay.
Okay, but what does the average person actually get paid out of that?
The average person does not matter, because the average person in NASA actually believes that all these things are going into space, and there's actually a Mars rover in Mars instead of Devon Island, Canada. The average person doesn't know anything. It's literally the top echelon. Everybody else just needs to know what they're working on.
One of the things, and I really do want to touch on this, is the lead engineer of the Orion talking about how the Van Allen belts are a problem, because this is an argument I've encountered so much. So
you encountered it with me. That's why you're talking about it.
No, I have seen this in a ton of different places, especially on YouTube. So this is one of those things that really irks me, because it just shows a big misunderstanding of what seems like a pretty basic video. So when you look at it, it's not that people are going to die from radiation sickness from going through it. It's very clearly the electronics that are the issue. Look at computers, if you can even call them that, from the time of the Apollo landings. Those are bulky as hell. A little bit of radiation is not going to do shit to that.
Listen, man. Hold on, dude.
Whoa, hold on. Roast,
that's a
you
huge
get mad when
fallacy,
people
brother.
interrupt you. Let Hawk finish.
That's a huge fallacy there, brother. Hey, listen, man. I knew this was going to happen there, King Xerxes. You are not a moderator, dude. You are literally just an opponent. All right? So at this point,
I'm not the
if you're going to
moderator,
continue
you're right.
on, I'm out, dude. If you're going to continue on, I'm out.
Please let Esther do the moderating, because I don't want him leaving because you're jumping in.
Well, her mic stopped working. She's trying to get it fixed.
Oh, well. But yeah,
Go ahead, Hawk. Sorry.
So when you look at, because the computer didn't do anywhere near as much processing as the computers would do on modern day rockets. A lot more of that was actual people doing stuff. But those computers, incredibly bulky. The electronics on that, again, a little bit of radiation hits that, not going to do anything. Electronics today are incredibly small, and so even a little bit of damage from radiation is going to have a lot of issues.
You're not. No, man. No, man. How are you going to say something like this, dude? How are you going to say that 60 years ago, the technology was more adept to dealing with outside radiation when we now,
because it was bulkier and thicker.
Just in the 80s is when the advancements came around about radiating or radiation shielding for most electronics to make sure there is no interference. And come on, man. I mean, let's forget about the Van Allen belt. Let's look at the moon landing pictures. There is no crater under the module when it landed. There's no crater there. There needs to be a crater. There's no dust on the plate-like legs. There needs to be dust, okay? The dust is going to be kicked up by the booster coming down, okay? You would see the vehicle, and it's supposedly moving, but there's no tracks behind it. You see shadows in all different directions when there's only supposed to be one direction of shadows because there's only one light on the moon. Now, if you talk to some scientists, they're saying the moon is within the Earth's atmosphere. So
Who said that?
NASA did, man. Look it up.
When?
NASA did. That is recent. That is very recent. But they did say that. So at this point, we don't know what NASA is going to say because NASA has never had opposition until literally 4 or 5 years ago. Everybody took NASA as for granted because why wouldn't you? I mean, I myself was a very huge NASA fanboy.
So did the Soviet Union space program just not exist? Did Japan never launch? Did China never launch rockets?
For sure, they all launch rockets, but these rockets they never make it to space, man. These rockets have a parabolic flight straight to the ocean. These rockets that they're launching are essentially so. For example, like you believe there's a Tesla floating around in space right now, right? Tesla Roadster that
Probably out there
Elon.
somewhere.
What's that?
Probably out there somewhere. fling
Carving out the
something
summer,
hard
right?
enough.
Let's talk about the Tesla Roadster, right? Let's talk about the words that Elon Musk said, right?
Yeah, we have another
First of
person who
all,
wants to ask a question before you leave.
sure, no problem. So before before we say anything else, the number one words, like, we all know it's real because of how fake it looks. I mean, that right there is like a slap to the face. But beyond that, when they started asking him questions, this Tesla Roadster, was it specialized? Was it ready for space? And he says, no, it's easily drivable. Here, it was like a drivable one here on Earth, and we just popped it on the rocket, and boom, it's straight upstairs, right? What happens to the tires? Right, these are air-filled tires that are now entering a very low-pressure environment. The most intense vacuum that we know, right, as humans. Those tires would have blown up. What happens to the adhesive under all of the dashboard and under all the buttons when it's going from 400 degrees Fahrenheit to 700 degrees to minus 700 degrees Fahrenheit on the other side of the Earth? What happens to that adhesive? How come it's not all floating apart? We saw it for 5 days up there, just floating around, right? Elon Musk was not sending a roadster up there just for kicks and giggles. He was literally showing China, Russia, United States, I got the hottest rocket there is. Slap a freaking missile head on this thing, and you got yourself the most powerful weapon on Earth. Who wants it? $30 million a pop.
What kind of missile would you put on that? That's incredibly excessive, the amount of weight it could carry.
Intercontinental, man. Intercontinental rocket. Look at where these rockets end up.
There are cheaper ICBMs already made, and why would you want an ICBM that's reusable?
Why would you not want to deliver a bigger payload? And why would you want a reusable one? Because the only reusable parts are the parts that the main part that would actually detonate or hit anything would never really be part of the rocket. It would just be the final missile head that ends on it. The other parts would just break off. The thing is, you keep on thinking about, why would I need that on a ball Earth? You need to understand. I'm looking at it from the flat Earth perspective. From the flat Earth, from end to end, you're looking at a lot longer distance than what you think you need to traverse.
So I gotta ask, do you think governments are all that worried about the economic impact of these rockets when they are starting a total nuclear holocaust?
The economic impact? What do you mean by the economic impact?
You're saying
He's not trying to sell it on a bargain. What he's doing is he's showing you he's got the hottest, baddest rocket out now.
Yeah, and Russia's been using the same platform for rockets for 70 years because it's cheap and it works.
We're on the rocket, but you still believe there's a car floating in space.
Queen wants to ask a question before we end this recording. You guys can keep talking if you want to after the recording's over, but Queen wants to ask.
No, I got to go anyways. My client's waiting, so I'll answer. I don't know if it's questions for me anyways, but I'll answer it if she's going.
It's a really quick one because I know you mentioned that money was like a big reason why they would hold this off. But besides that, like, what would they be losing if they said the Earth actually flat? Like, what?
Well, they'd lose everything. They'd lose all credibility. NASA will cease to exist at that point. NASA was created by the paperclip. Operation. I think it was paperclip. Yeah, Operation Paperclip. It was Nazi. It was literally a bunch of Nazi rocket scientists. Okay, it all started there. If we start looking at old pictures and you start understanding the only people that actually go out to space are Freemasons, then you kind of start understanding what the whole process of NASA is. If you look at the NASA sign, it's got that red whip that almost looks like a serpent's tongue.
I got a quick question really quick. Are you familiar with most of the works from the leader of Nazi Germany?
Question. Let him answer Queen's question.
Sorry, I'll let him.
So it's called a vector, okay? That vector is used, if you look at it, through all of the space programs. Not only NASA, but all of them. The Russian one, the Japanese one. That vector is a clear sign of Freemasonry. If you look at all of the astronauts are all going to have Freemason rings. Some of them even wear their actual apron.
Okay.
Some of them actually wear. Are you guys still there?
Yeah.
Yeah, some of them actually wear. So really, the motivation. There's two motivations. There's money, and money's obviously a very huge motivation. $52 million a day. You could do a lot with that. And not only that, but the motivation of you got to think of this on a different scale. You guys are thinking about, us humans here on Earth. They want to make us seem very, very small. If you think about it, think about how astrophysicists explain us. We're like a speck of nothing in the middle of a vast universe, and us ourselves, humans, are a speck of nothing on that speck of nothing. So you're like a nothing of a nothing of a nothing, and it makes you feel very insignificant. But at the point that you say God or a creator created this earth, and he created it with a dome called the firmament to protect you, and he created it with all the sustainability of life inside, and he does this because he loves you, kind of gives you a little bit more importance. Like, if God made this for me, I'm not that small. I'm not that
So
insignificant.
you're
You
an
want to
atheist?
overpower a human population, you do it by two things: making them feel insignificant and imposing fear on them. And that's what Freemasons do. A
So
big
you're
Freemason was Albert Pike, and he's the one. He wrote about all three world wars before they even begun.
Okay, so you
And
answered. Hold
so
on.
you are a theist? You're a believer?
I am a believer, yes.
Okay.
All
Are
right,
we
that
gonna end it there?
yeah, we need to end the recording there if he's gonna leave, and then I
Okay.
guess we can just stay in the
So
chat room and talk.
okay.
I mean,
I
I'm
wanted
like
to
I said,
say
guys, I'm happy to come again another week. I'm sorry that it was so difficult for me to, like, I literally don't have a schedule. I'm based it's everything that's on my clients. So it's when my clients have time. My clients are very wealthy people, and they don't really have all the time in the world to make, different schedules. So I kind of got to abide by them. But if I have, some hours available, and if Hawk, you want to come back, we can continue this. I know I kind of shortened it up here today, and I apologize for that, but we can continue on
yeah, I
some other
did
time.
want to say
Okay, all
thank you
right,
for
guys.
coming anyways. So thank you for
What's that?
everyone
I'm sorry?
who participated. I said thank you for coming anyways. It's
Oh, it's my
appreciated.
pleasure. And like I said, I'm sorry for all the mix up at first.
It's
Okay,
okay.
well, we're gonna end the stream there, but the conversation can continue.
Have a good